We're learning a ChatGPT account connected to Jesse Van Rootselaar was banned by OpenAI long before the horrific shooting.
Mijung, that account was banned 7 months before the mass shooting for violating the company policy. OpenAI saying the account was investigated for unspecified uses of the chat bots.
My name is Nico Lagan, and I'm too conservative for the conservatives. My co-host Rob Ambrose, not woke enough for the liberals. We are the political orphans. As you can hear, it is breaking news, at least yesterday it was, that OpenAI, the parent company of ChatGPT, had flagged the Tumbler Ridge shooter's account about 7 months ago. Not only was it flagged, but it was banned. Not only was it banned, but they had a conversation internally on if they should report it to authorities or not. They chose not to.
Really? What? Are
and
they leaked?
Here,
what was the?
Well, if you bring it, well, okay. If you give me 2 seconds, I'm just bringing up the article right here because the Wall Street Journal.
Tell me everything right now.
100%, you impatient men.
Yeah,
I'm trying not to swear here. You impatient man.
Yes.
Man-ish individual. It's reported by the Wall Street Journal that OpenAI employees raised alarms about Canada shooter suspect months ago. It's 7 months ago to be exact. So months before the shooter, I'm not going to use his name because it became the suspect in a mass shooting that devastated a rural town in British Columbia, Canada. OpenAI considered alerting law enforcement about their interactions that he had with the ChatGPT chatbot. He was the scenarios. He was describing scenarios involving gun violence over the course of several days, according to the people familiar with the matter.
Okay.
Her post, his post. Flagged by an automated review system, alarmed employees at OpenAI internally. About a dozen staffers debated whether to take action on his posts. Some employees interpreted his writings as an indication of potential real-world violence and urged leaders to alert Canadian law enforcement about his behavior. The people familiar with the matter say, but they chose not to, and because it did not reach the limit that they set, whatever that limit is. They haven't told us, but they approached the RCMP and the Canadian police, the day after the shooting, saying that they had information about his behavior. And the whole point for me is not really should they have not. What I really want to talk about is the implications that we're hearing here. Because we're opening up a massive worm, like we're opening up a massive hole here. Is this something that we really are going towards? Like, we expect those companies to report this? Because it seems that, our AI minister, Evan Solomon, there's this article in the Epoch Times that came out yesterday saying Ottawa questions OpenAI after report platform flag BC shooters prompts. And basically, here is what Evan Solomon had to say about it. He said that he's been in contact with them. They've been talking, and so basically he says that he's in contact with OpenAI and other AI platform about their safety protocol after hearing reports that concerning online activity by the shooter in the Tumbler Ridge massacre was not reported to the police. Canadians expect online platforms, including OpenAI, to have a robust safety protocol and escalation practices in place to protect online safety and ensure law enforcement are warned about potential violence. I am in contact with OpenAI and other AI platforms regarding their safety protocol. And then Chris Eby, the Premier of BC, also said that we will use all powers of government to ensure that police have the tools they need to investigate every aspect of this horrific tragedy. So I wanted to use this as kind of a question period for people, because here is the implications that I'm hearing and how people are reacting to this is the question I have for you guys. Do you really want a private company reporting to our government? Because if you do, that means that they would need to set up some type of procedure and agreement on both ends. What is considered worth reporting? Is that really what you want? You want the government to be responsible for telling platforms what should be reported? Because that is free speech right there. And I'm not saying that what that guy did was right. It was absolutely horrendous what that guy did. But the problem that I see here is that this is another attack on free speech, at least if you ask me, because I don't want the government involved with private business and deciding what we can and cannot say, because at the end of the day, that's what it is. I don't trust them. I don't want them to be responsible for setting the line, because where does it stop?
Yeah. I mean, hold on.
But before you go, let me ask you what. I'm just going to add you one more thing to this, and then you can go with it. Because at the end of the day, who do we blame for this? Do we blame the RCMP or the police for giving the guns back? Do we blame the judge that ordered the police to give the guns back? Do we blame the mother for somewhat encouraging the behavior of that son? Do we blame ChatGPT or OpenAI for not reporting this? Or are we ready to have the real discussion and address that we have a massive mental health crisis in Canada, and we need to stop enabling these individuals like it's normal that they think the way that they think? And by that, I mean the transgenders out there. Do we stop reinforcing their behavior and start addressing the problem? Or do we keep blaming everybody else instead of addressing the root issue?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is actually, the more time goes on, the more sort of interesting this story becomes, because it's got several different angles, right? That are all kind of right at the linchpin of the culture wars today. You've got the trans issue, you've got gun rights issues, which are really two completely separate issues, but they're both here. You've got mental health issues. I think as far as the trans issue goes, I mean, to me, that's obvious. It's not, I see it. People are saying, "Oh, you're blaming trans people." No. No one's blaming trans people. Like, I'm going to be very generous here, because if you want to be effective in this debate, you have to, you can't just say out in public, like, these are just retarded, mentally ill men. Like, we all know that they are, right? But if you want to have but you don't say that out in the mainstream, in the public sphere there. But we do need to have that conversation, right? We can make it polite if you want. It doesn't need to be woke, but it can be polite. It's not about, saying all trans people are violent. What it is about saying is all trans people have some sort of a dysphoria, a mental illness. And is it smart to be dumping hormones in extreme levels like gasoline on a fire onto mentally ill people? Forget the trans stuff. The only reason we're even talking about trans is because it's the trans that this problem is occurring within right now. But it's not about their trans status. It's about that we're pumping their bodies full of hormones their bodies are not designed to take, and they're already mentally ill. I mean, anybody knows, how anyone who's ever done any sort of, steroid or injection cycle, right? When I was younger, I used to partake, in some testosterone boosting and whatnot. And anyone who's ever done that knows that as soon as you take your last shot, within 2 weeks, you will crash hard. Like, it affects everything about you, your personality, your mindset. So of course, if you're dumping these sorts of powerful drugs onto people who are already mentally ill, that's a recipe for disaster. And that's the conversation that we need to have. As far as the gun issue, for me, it doesn't move the needle one way or the other. I don't, my position on it is, like, I'm not as firm on it as you are. Like, this is a major thing because you're a gun owner, right? I'm not. I don't support any more cracking down. I don't support the gun bans. Like, I've been convinced since I started this show that the problem is not legal gun owners, right? If we're just looking at the actual numbers, almost all the crimes by guns in Canada are illegal American guns that are brought up from the States, right? And done by criminals. So cracking down, taking your grandfather's 20-06 or whatever they're cracking down on, that's just not effective policy. And that's where my opposition to this comes from. It's not because I'm a huge gun nut. I'm always going to oppose ineffective legislation. We don't need laws for the sake of laws. A law has to solve a real problem, and it must do it effectively. And in this case, I just don't see this as a real problem that needs to be solved. So that is why I oppose it. And then I think the mental health thing, yeah, there's something going on. You know, there's certainly something going on in society when, I mean, this guy has been, two different groups saw something happening, right? You had the OpenAI guys who saw, I don't know what was in those things, but it must be pretty fucking bad for OpenAI to be like, shit, this motherfucker's crazy. Let's cancel his account. And the fact that they were even considering calling the police suggests it's a pretty serious, conversation he's been having with OpenAI that probably was all kinds of red flags that we'll see if it ever comes out, So, and then you've got the police on a completely separate issue. They're taking guns because they know this kid's unstable. So, like, this is not a situation where people didn't know this coming. We all saw this coming a mile of fucking way. There's been a massive failure when you can have this kind of crime in this kind of individual with these kind of warning signs, and nobody fucking knew a thing until the day he went to the school and started shooting kids.
But who, at the end of the day, the question, I think we've established that over the past couple of weeks because we've been talking about this quite heavily. We've had a lot of conversations about guns. We've had a lot of conversations about what happened at Tumbler Ridge. We had, you weren't able to attend, but we had Tom Mavin, director for the National Firearm Association, on Thursday. It was a great episode, by the way. It was like, it's very, very fun to speak with somebody that is so involved with the police, like he understands police procedures, and he probably has a bit more information than the average individual has. But one of the things that he mentioned on Thursday is that the file, the court file for the judgment for the whole court appearance of the gun seized and the guns being seized and then brought back, because he was explaining that police officers do not need a warrant in order to seize somebody's firearms if they see something very problematic. If they identify, let's say, a gun owner with serious mental issues that could be a threat to himself and society, they don't need a warrant to seize the guns. They can seize them right there. And what he was saying also is that they have 30 days to explain to a judge why they did it, to kind of build their case, right? And we know that this went on for 18 months. But one of the things that I find very particular is that Tom explained that those court files have been sealed. We do not have access to what happened within that courthouse during the whole procedure. They sealed it. So right then and there, I see so many problematics all over the place that somehow those guns were seized, were then returned, yet the kid, and I don't want to say the kid because by the time he committed the shootings, he was an adult. He was 18-year-old. He was an 18-year-old. Yeah. He had been brought in under the Mental Health Act, the Canadian Mental Health Act. So he was flagged. He had been flagged a long time ago. The guns were seized. Either a woke judge or the RCMP gave them back their guns. We don't know who yet. We can only speculate at this point, but there's so many issues all over the place that could have prevented this from happening.
Yes.
But do we 100%. Really want do we really want, because it's not, as you said, and I appreciate you saying this, it's not a legal gun owner problem. We're not the ones that are committing the crime. But then now the question becomes, do you really want governments to be involved with private companies and have them decide what is appropriate and what is not appropriate to be said on their platforms? Because it did not happen to you when it never happened to you during COVID, but it happened to me where I got a really big account on my Facebook. I don't even care about the followers that much, but I had my account for almost 14 years since Facebook opened, basically, that it was available. All the contacts that I made through martial arts for over 10 years were all on there. I lost absolutely everything, but I got banned because I was talking against COVID. I was talking against the vaccine. And now I've been proven right. Everything I said was 100% accurate, but this is what happens when the government gets involved with social media and bans certain people because they don't like what they have to say. And this is the type of power that we're seeing even Solomon clearly wants to have. He wants to be able to do that. If he's in discussions with them, like, you don't need to look very far. Look at Bill C2, C8, C9, C12, C16, and soon we're going to have another Bill C63 that's going to be retabled. It's all about censorship and surveillance. Is that what you really want? That the government can tell whatever? Because where's the line drawn? Is it our woke government that's going to decide what can be said and not said in a private conversations that I'm having with a bot, with an AI bot? Like, is this really where we're, because this is very problematic. Now we're really talking about Big Brother.
I don't know. I think there's a middle ground here between, I think you have to consider what you're saying about, you have to have some privacy to talk to your bot about whatever the fuck you want. You can almost treat it like a therapist, I guess.
Sure.
But I think, like a therapist, I think there's a few things that if it gets expressed, it should be passed on to authorities. Like, if someone makes a direct threat, says, I'm going to go shoot up my school, to their AI bot, I think it's appropriate that the AI bot notifies the local police and they investigate that.
But who's to know if it's true?
Well, that's why you investigate it. I mean,
so basically, you're okay with the government being notified of a private conversation that you're having with an AI software that, for all you know, you're kidding. They identify you, and then you receive a visit from the police for something that you said in a private conversation. You're okay with that? Because I'm not. I'm definitely not okay with that.
I know that we won't see eye to eye on this. Like I said, I appreciate the need to have privacy respected, but I think there is a balancing act. I think you can find a balancing act where privacy can be respected, or at least there is a sweet spot. I guess now, if someone wants to make the argument, okay, sure, but I can't trust the government to find that sweet spot.
Exactly.
I don't have a strong argument against that, but I'm just talking sort of in a perfect world. If you could theoretically hit that sweet spot, and I don't think it's
you can't.
I don't know, because I'm talking like, if you're joking about shooting up a school, I mean, you probably should, right? I think
so. Now jokes are bad. So now jokes are hurtful and deserve a visit from the police. That's what you're saying. Because I know what you're saying. You cannot win on that one.
It's a threat of violence. If someone makes a threat of violence, I just think of, like, imagine if those were your kids that were killed. Would you not want them to?
No, absolutely not. No, I would have had a problem, because at the end of the day, here's the trouble. As soon as you give the government that power, they're never getting it back. They're never giving it back. If you look throughout history, when governments start censoring you and start taking your guns away, this leads to a place where people can no longer say what they want to say, and they can no longer defend themselves. There's a very good reason why the Constitution, the two First Amendment, are free speech and gun rights, because if you do lose your free speech, you have the firearms to get it back. That's the idea behind the First and the Second Amendment. Those are the two most important rights that we have. Free speech is the most important right that we have, and self-defense and defending ourselves against a tyrannical government is the second one. If we allow the government to pass bills like Bill C-9, the new Bill C-63 that's going to be retabled soon, we lose our free speech. Because does that mean that comedians can no longer make jokes about what the government thinks is offensive? Because this is the thing. Once you start going down that road, it never ends. Do you trust your government? Because I don't. I don't trust them whatsoever. I don't.
So, I mean, again,
do you trust people that things that C9 defines, you know this, we've talked about this so many times, C9 defines hate as something greater than disdain. That means, as we've talked about before with Bruce Party, that we are criminalizing emotions. Where does the line end?
Those are two different things. I completely agree.
No, they're not.
You're talking about,
it's a slippery slope.
Hold on. You said your thing. I'm going to say mine now. I definitely agree with everything you say about Bill C-9. I think, but that's a separate thing. That's talking about hate speech. I'm not talking about regulating hate speech. I'm talking about a direct violent threat. And you know, that's just something I just think is okay. Like that, the slippery slope is a fallacy when you apply that, because you don't need to necessarily slip down that slope anymore. You just say, this is what it is. Because something is either a direct violent threat or it is not. That's an easy thing to do. And if it is, I think
it's not.
Should be reported.
It's not, because the fallacy in your statement is that you trust the person to make that line, to draw that line in the sand, and I don't. I don't trust the government whatsoever. Just look at what they did in 2022. They froze people's bank accounts for giving money to the Freedom Convoy. And it was proven later, it was proven either at the end last year or this year, I can't remember exactly, but it was proven, and John Carpe from the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms helped on that case, where it was proven by a court in Supreme Court that what they did was unconstitutional. Their implication of the Emergency Act was wrong. So we have a government that went tyrannical during COVID, that went tyrannical during the Freedom Convoy, no consequences whatsoever. And now you're telling me that you want to trust them to have a procedure with private companies as to conversations that I'm having with their bot. That's insane, man. You cannot trust the same people that used the Emergency Act unconstitutionally.
Yeah. But I'm not, like, again, I understand, yes, the police is part of the government, but I mean, I don't really see it in the way that you're talking about it. I don't think when a report gets made that goes up to some higher command. I think they'll send a constable or whatever to go and talk to this person and see, does this seem like a credible threat? Is this person crazy as fuck? Because if he is crazy as fuck, yeah, I want him brought in. I want him fucking involuntarily committed.
Wow, we definitely, absolutely disagree with this one 100%, because the slippery slope is the government. I do not trust the government to take a good decision in favor of Canadians.
Yeah, no, I get it.
They will do what they want to do, and if you look at facts, they're trying to push about 7 bills right now. They're 100% surveillance and censorship bills, and they're taking my guns away at the same time. Now you're okay with them having the power to know what you're saying in a private conversation with a bot. And I'm not saying that what he did was right, because it wasn't. But at the end of the day, you had no proof that he was going to commit those crimes. And we need to stop blaming speech for all of our problems. At the end of the day, it's either the judge that gave back those guns that was a problem. It's either the RCMP that gave back those guns that was a problem. But at the end of the day, the problem resides with the massive amount of mental health that we have in Canada. And instead of addressing our mental health crisis, we are reinforcing their beliefs. We don't want to hurt their feelings, so we continue reinforcing their delusions instead of addressing the problems. Canada has become a place where the patients are running the asylum. This is where we live in Canada right now.
Yeah. And I'm just reading the comments here. Like woke, like broke, like relax, bro. It's cool. Just chill. We're not going to agree on every single thing. You don't need to get mad about it. You know, there's a lot of things that I don't agree with that get said here, and a lot of things I do agree with. And I don't get mad when someone disagrees with me. I might try to persuade them, but it is what it is. I see. The thing is, this is definitely going to be one of those debates where we're just going to agree to disagree civilly, because it goes back beyond just the debate. It's the parameters of this debate. Me and you have some we see a lot eye to eye on a lot of things, but there are definitely some fundamental, very different worldviews that we have that are going to just influence everything downstream of that, right? And this is one of those things. Like for me, I think I don't trust the government either, but in a different way. I don't think I still just don't think that they're out to get us intentionally because they're evil people. I think they're just idiots. I think that they're ideological zealots and they're morons and they're making terrible decisions. And that's why, and that frames my worldview, that I think they can either be persuaded or defeated, politically. I know it seems like, political change can never happen, but it always seems like that throughout history until it does. I mean, that's just how the history of politics works. So maybe I'll get there. Maybe I'll get there to I'm like, actually, you know what? These motherfuckers are actually just trying.
This, when this is the main difference between you and I, is that you
Kill us all.
you don't want to believe that there is an agenda behind what the government does, and I know that there's one, but at the same time, I think the major difference between our opinions is you haven't been bitten by the censorship bug. Like, I lost an extremely lucrative career as a sales engineer for not taking a fucking shot. I refused the vaccine because I trust my immune system because I take care of myself. I lost a very lucrative career because I chose not to. I got some of my biggest accounts banned that took me years to build. Why? Because I did not agree with what the government had to say. So at the end of the day, it's easy to still somewhat trust the government when they didn't take your livelihood away and when they didn't take some accounts, some social media accounts that you've worked for years. So on that point, we do have a guest tonight. We are going to bring her, France. You can hear me? Thumbs up if you can hear me. You've been smiling and shaking your head at what I've been saying, so I don't know if you're in agreement or not. It's going to make for a very interesting conversation, that's for sure.
Yeah, I froze. Sorry, but I was actually.
It's okay.
I caught most of what you were saying. Yeah, we'll follow.
It's not the last time we're going to be speaking about this either way. And the conversation with France is going to continue there because of what happened to her. So it's a topic that's going to carry on throughout the show. So, and I apologize, Frances, if I massacre your last name. I am French after all, so you need to apologize. We are joined by wrongfully terminated Mount Royal University professor Frances Widdowson to speak about the Kamloops, BC mass graves hoax. France, welcome.
Thanks for having me on.
How's it going, sir?
I've been trying to have you on for a little while. I had reached out to what's your colleague out of BC that was also a professor that got in trouble? A colleague, as in I think you guys have recorded a lot of content together.
There's the teacher, Jim McMurtry.
That's the guy. That's him. So we had him on the show. I reached out to him trying to get you. I never heard back, but somebody gave me your email address this week, and pow, here you are.
Oh, great. Excellent.
So before we get into really what I wanted to ask you, how about you give us in a few sentences, just to explain to the people that might not know who you are, what happened to you?
In terms of my job?
In 2021, yeah. What sent you? I started creating content because I refused the vaccine. And I lost my career. Something very similar happened to you, different subject. But what happened to you in 2021?
What happened is that I was a critic of the indigenization process of universities, and that resulted in another number of colleagues being very upset at me. And then a mob was instigated on social media to try to get me fired. And my satirizing, so I began to satirize these attempts to get me fired. And as a result of that, I was charged with harassment because of my attempts to defend myself. And my cases, I had to go through arbitration for a year, which was just abusive, unbelievably abusive process. I was found to have been wrongfully terminated, but the arbitrator, David Philip Jones, said that I could not be reinstated because Gabrielle Weaselhead disagrees with me on the question of Indigenous science being science. I disagree that it is a science. And Mary Lee Mulholland thinks that me saying that there are only two sexes is denying the humanity of trans people. And this causes friction, and therefore I should not be back in the university.
Would you even want to go back? Would you even want to go back at this point?
Yes. I will fight for the rest of my life to get back in there. And my case is being appealed. It just went to the appeal on February 6th. And we had to listen to all sorts of crazy things said about me at that appeal hearing. And then 90 days they're going to decide whether it should go back to another arbitrator to sort through all these issues all over again.
Good for you. You got a bigger set of balls than most men. If you want to go back to this, good for you.
Definitely.
Good for you. Good for you. Because that was one of the comments in the comment section. And I agree. If you want to go back to those woke indoctrination centers, as I like to call them, you are a ballsy individual. That is for sure. So I know you caught some of the conversation because I'm pretty sure I told you this. I'm a conservative. I'm a Christian conservative, not a conservative as in the Conservative Party of Canada. I'm a real conservative, a small c conservative, but I'm a Christian first and foremost. Rob is a liberal, so you see that we don't see eye to eye on. We see eye to eye on a lot of topics, but there's a lot of them. But we don't agree on some things. What do you think about what's going on? Because your free speech was attacked. Because basically, at the end of the day, it's a free speech problem. What you've been facing. So, what do you think about what's going on in Canada when it comes to Bill C9, especially because there's Native leaders out there that want to use the residential school deniers like you as a term for hate speech, to say, because they have asked in government to say, hey, and Bill C9 could be used, if passed, to bring hate speech I don't know what the actual implications will be yet, because the bill is not passed and nobody's been arrested for it. But you could be charged with hate speech under Bill C9 for being called a residential school denier. So what do you think about the state of Canada right now when it comes to free speech?
It's absolutely terrible, and we have actually been on the wrong path for quite some time. All hate speech legislation should be repealed. It is fundamentally subjective and used to go after people for just stating what they believe to be true, which should never be illegal in a democratic society. So I think we have a lot of problematic legislation already in place. Hate speech being the, that it should be the United States model for free speech that we use, which I believe is called the Brandenburg test, where if you incite illegal activity, especially violent illegal activity, that kind of speech is not allowed. But the hate speech is, opening up a group to detestation and vilification. And how do you know if you are doing that? Like, it just seems to be an unbelievably subjective type of piece of legislation, which, is going to be used to punish your enemies in a political system. That's what it's used for.
Yeah, Bruce Party called it literally Bruce. We had Bruce Party on the show, lower Bruce Party, to speak about, to do a deep dive on Bill C9. And he said, he's the one that quoted that Bill C9 is criminalizing emotions. And we're talking about an extremely intelligent individual here. And we read the bills, at least I read them entirely. I read them, and it is scary. Bill C9 is very, very, very scary. And the attack that we're seeing on Canada is unprecedented. We've never seen 2026. We could go from a somewhat free country to not be able to say anything anymore. Like 2026 is the year this could happen.
Definitely. And we should fight now and fight hard before it's all gone. And we are at that point right now. And it's kind of shocking, the apathy about it. You know, I'm really surprised that people aren't realizing the danger, because freedom of speech is a fundamental value. We
100%.
need that. We need to be able to discuss things, to be able to determine all of our other values. And that's very perceptive of Bruce to talk about criminalizing emotions. How you're able to moderate your emotions is through discussion.
Yeah.
So now you're not going to be able to discuss your emotions, which might be disturbing, and not be able to have other people react against your emotions and help you to moderate your emotions. This is going to create very, very angry people who have to suppress their views, and that is going to lead to violence. Doing that, it is going to create a lot of angry people whose only outlet is going to be violence. So it is a very frightening development that's happening.
Well, and you know, we were talking about that earlier in the show about there's this rise of, you know, trans-identified mass shooters now, and I think, and I've heard this thought expressed as well, you know, on gender critical Twitter and social media, that, you know, what we're seeing is the first stage, the first waves of exactly the dynamic that you're talking about, this where it's sort of like, you know, you've got a lot of these people. Obviously not every single trans person is, you know, a narcissist per se, but the identity absolutely attracts a lot of narcissists for the narcissistic fuel that has been available to that identity over the last 10 to 15 years, right? You've got society fawning over them, telling them how great and special and stunning and brave they are, how they're not just women, they're the best women. And, you know, this attracts a lot of, you know, the narcissistic fuel attracts narcissists. And there is not every single trans person, but anyone who interacts with this group regularly online understands that narcissists are heavily overrepresented in that identity group. And you know, as the worm turns, as society stops celebrating these people, and they actually start to get a real sense of, no, not everything you do is special. In fact, some of it is actually quite dangerous. You know, they're going to get a taste of instead of just mindless approval. And that is not going to sit well with a lot of the disorder type personalities that make up a lot of that community. And I think, you know, I think you're hitting it on the head when you said this is going to happen.
Yes. No, I think it's connected. And I think, you know, there's always been a lot of violence. Whenever you oppose trans activism, there is these expressions of, you know, people should be beaten up for, you know, questioning whether a man sperm producing individual who believes he's a woman, if you question whether he is a woman, you know, it's just this huge outrage and threats of violence. So the fact that things are turning a bit to you know, try to prevent more and more children from having their lives destroyed, which is a big concern. Like, I think it's a concern for all these surgeries and hormones and so on to be being given to people generally. I think it's medical malpractice, obviously, to be doing this. But the main concern is children. And the fact that we cannot, you know, step in to try to stop that without all sorts of, you know, very, very sort of vehement accusations about, you know, the moral failings of people who are trying to do that is resulting in those people being targeted by trans activism. And I think that what we're seeing a little bit is just an extension of that, those kind of violent outbursts that we've been, or threats of violence that we've been seeing for many years.
100%. You used the word apathy earlier in reference to Canadians, and I couldn't agree with you more on that one. That is the perfect definition of what it is to be Canadians nowadays. Are you surprised that what happened to you didn't wake up more people? That people are just, it's like, okay, it's not my problem, basically. Was that surprising to you?
A little bit, because my case is so absurd that you would think that people would be concerned about universities obviously being taken over by authoritarian kinds of tendencies. And, you know, the Lindsay Shepherd case, which happened, I believe, in 2017, I believe that was the year. It might have been, no, it was 2017. People were very disturbed by what happened in that case. Like there was massive concern that was expressed, and my case was 4 years later, and the reaction was very much more muted. And I think people are just seeing the universities almost as a lost cause. Like here's another crazy thing. And, you know, this is a real problem because, you know, universities are not play a very, very important function in democratic societies. And if our universities are going to be destroyed, we are heading down a very dark and dystopian path. And I'm hoping, because I have been, and you've probably been noticing that, I have been going into a number of universities to try to expose the absolute intolerance for having conversations about the unmarked graves claim and the idea that Canada is a genocidal country, that claim. And the students just tell you, you cannot have this discussion here. You must leave. And then the administrators in these universities back up that attitude. It is really quite shocking what has happened. And, you know, British Columbia is the worst province for this. It has just been overtaken by authoritarianism. But I was just recently at the University of Lethbridge in Alberta, and a very similar thing happened there. And the fact that the government of Alberta is not enforcing its freedom of speech directive that it put forward for all its universities shows you how unprincipled you know, all stripes of governments are on the freedom of speech, the extent to which there's freedom of speech in universities.
If you're ever in Montreal, let me know. I'll
I'm
go
gonna be
protect
in
you.
for the women's, for the trans, the critical of trans. There's going to be something on. I think
they get violent
about the
getting
penises out of prisons. That subject.
If you want,
women's prisons, I should. Penises out of women's prisons.
It's wild that we have to have this conversation.
Yep.
But if you're here, let me know. I'm a big guy.
I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna be there on
if you
March 7th, 8th, 9th, I think it is.
I've offered the same thing to Billboard Chris, because last time he was in Montreal, he got his arm broken. So I have about 20 years of martial art. I used to fight, so I'm very, very happy to help protect people that I respect what they do. So if it's something that you can use, let me know. We'll figure it out. You have my email address. Let's figure it out. One of the things that obviously you saw when we were talking, Rob and I disagree on some things when it comes to free speech, and I see your case to be 100% about free speech. That's all it is free speech. And we've seen it throughout North America. Like, you got guys like Charlie Kirk that went universities to universities and campuses to campuses to speak about very common sense thing, but enabling the conversation. Most of the people are not like me. I've been following Charlie Kirk before he had an audience. He used to show up to those places and he was almost attacked every single time he showed up. People did not show up to listen to him. They showed up to criticize him. And that's probably what you're experiencing right now, right? When you're going to universities, you're seeing the hostile environment. But how do you explain that the concept of universities is to be challenged. Like, I remember watching movies growing up where I think it's Higher Learning. Do you know that movie from like the 90s?
It sounds familiar, but I haven't seen it. No.
It's with Ice Cube. It's either way. It's an old movie, but one of the professors says that his goal is to challenge his students. If you feel uncomfortable by what I tell you, good. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but how do you explain that this is no longer the case in Canada?
It's been happening for quite some time, since the 60s, actually, with the idea that there's not an objective truth. That was what entered into the universities in the 60s. And that's been gradually unfolding. And then what we saw in the 2000s was these activists who were able to enter into the universities were able to take over the machinery, which were these equity, diversity, and inclusion offices. So the activists then began to control the universities, and then you saw all these political statements being made by universities, and that means that professors and students are given a signal about the right way to think, and they know if they challenge that,
orthodoxy.
Their careers will not thrive under those conditions. And then you
hear
have
that story time and again.
Yeah, and that's what's happened. And now, just traveling to these universities, and I'm going to continue to go to these universities and press these questions. It's completely out of control, and it's because the administration, the unions are totally captured in the universities. That's the other problem. You rely on your union to defend you for academic freedom and freedom of expression, and they are completely captured by equity, diversity, and inclusion ideology. So you can't expect them to represent you fairly. And then the administration will not stand up to these unbelievable bullies. Like, they are just crazed people who just think that because they think something is true, they should be able to impose it on you, and you should not be able to challenge them in any way. So it's been happening for a long time, but it's really within the last 10 years that the machinery of the university has been taken over. And that means that there's going to be a huge battle to try to get back the academic character of the universities.
Yeah. Before you ask your question, Rob, let me just ask you a simple question, because this is a place where you and I were talking about before you joined. Is Rob believes that that the people in power are just idiots. They're doing a bunch of mistakes, and that's leading us where we are right now. Me, I'm a conspiracy theorist. I know that it's organized. It's done on purpose. I don't underestimate anybody. I do not. I always think that they're a lot smarter than they appear. Do you think that was done on purpose? Because you mentioned since the 60s, we're talking over 60 years now. That's very hard for me to believe that it's a coincidence, that it's just a bunch of idiots that carried on the work of other idiots, especially when you read a book like Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky that gives you the playbook on how to take over universities and make it happen. So what do you think? Do you think it was done on purpose?
I just want to add a little bit of context to that. If what you're talking about, Nico, I believe that the academics absolutely did this on purpose. I'm talking about the government, though. I think the government is not woke academics, right? Woke academia is part of, yes, the institution of Canada for sure. But we were talking in the context of should AI, if it's received a violent threat from a user, should it report that to the police? I believe that there are limits. It's okay to place reasonable restrictions on freedom of speech. And at the end of the day, he still has I think violent speech, it's okay to report that to authorities. And that was my too woke position. But the question was not about AI. The question was in general. We've had that conversation many times where
I believe in men behind the curtains. You believe in idiots
that's
fault
good,
parroting other
Sure.
idiots. So let's break it down to the common denominator. What do you think is happening from your experience, France, from dealing with being in academia, being kicked out of academia, and still be crazy enough to go back into academia to try to convince them that there's a better way? Do you think this is done on purpose, or is it just idiots leading idiots?
Well, I think there are economic and political reasons for why authoritarianism begins to become more pronounced. And so, and George Orwell is the great thinker about these matters. And he talked about this a lot, you know, in terms of,
We call him a prophet around here, not an author.
yeah, like he's got some incredible insights about this. So you can see the warning signs of when things start to happen, which weaken the checks on power. That's really what starts to happen, is that, and in our case, in our time, the kind of depressing aspect of this is what is happening is compassion is being used to do this.
Weaponized compassion.
It's being weaponized. So people think they're being nice and kind by imposing kind of authoritarian measures against their citizens. So I think that's the kind of the really disturbing feature of what is happening, which was different than what George Orwell was talking about in the 30s and 40s, because he was an analyst of totalitarianism and how totalitarian regimes emerge. We have the similar kinds of things happening, but it's being done under the auspices of not under some kind of nationalistic kind of rubric, but under being kind to the oppressed, changing the legal system to be slanted supposedly in favor of the oppressed, which then reduces the protections of due process for all people within the system. And once you start doing things like that, you'll see the real totalitarian force start to assert itself. So the compassion is used to weaken the system, and then you'll have the actual totalitarian force begin to assert.
I think I think
But just to go back to the question, I would like you to answer the question. So do you, because I think there's two things that we're seeing. There's two layers here.
Yeah.
There's people that will do, as you said, they in the name of inclusion, in the name of empathy, in the name of being nice to people, they actually believe that being tyrannical is okay as long as it is for their thoughts, for what they believe is right, because they have the moral high ground.
Yep.
But this would have never happened if they weren't people enabling it and directing it. Because I'm not saying that there's people behind the scenes that control every aspect of everything. They don't need to. We're so predictable that they can mold us and just say this. Again, if you read Solly Alinsky's book on Rules for Radicals, he depicts the blueprint on how to make this happen, and that book was written in the 70s, so it's very close to your 60s and when it started.
Well, I don't. My answer would be I don't know. I'd have to look at the evidence for it. So I'm not sure what the evidence is. So it would be, I do this exercise with which was put forward by Peter Boghossian. I'm not sure if you're familiar with his work, but he has a method called spectrum street epistemology, where you have a claim, which is, the claim would be, the government is intentionally
sabotaging the country or
sabotaging the country. So would you, and from strongly agree to strongly disagree, where would you sit on that claim?
Yeah, I mean, that's good exercise. I would sit on slightly disagree.
Okay, and where would you?
I'm off the
And I know,
chart.
yeah.
I'm completely off the board as it's
he's
100% done on purpose.
He's on.
Find an extreme side.
Way over. It's all
I would be
page.
on the neutral. I'd be on the neutral mat, and so I would stand on the neutral mat, and I would say, Nico, what evidence do you have that the government is, you know, intentionally engaged in this kind of thing, and it's not just a collection of forces that's resulted in this happening, not necessarily intentional. So what is your evidence for that?
C2, C8, C9, C12, C16, Bill C63, Bill C4.
But those can also be explained. They can also be explained by incompetent government. Yeah, I think they can.
Not if you read
I agree.
Not if you read the bills. It's like, it's the same thing when you look at a guy like Mark Carney. A lot of people think he's an idiot, but that guy's not Justin Trudeau. That guy's that guy to me is evil, absolutely evil, but he is brilliant. That dude is very smart. He's very effective at what he's doing. But if you read his book, he tells you, he lays it out as in what he believes in, and everything he does today, you look at it and you're like, okay, that's pretty predictable. Just read values.
Yeah, but a lot of that
he tells you.
Census, you know,
But have you read his book?
Opinions like they're
no, it is
like,
not.
he doesn't state like we'll take over world or something, anything like that in his book.
But what is it about
like,
those bills?
All the positions that he.
But what is it? Those bills, you mentioned those bills as being the evidence. What is it about them that makes you think that it is some kind of intentional effort to, you know, undermine? And it's not just as Rob was saying, just kind of good intentions gone bad, you know, like that sort of thing. Like
if you read the bills,
it's kind of incompetence. That's kind of an incompetent kind of thing that would happen.
If you read the bills, it's not incompetence. Okay. If you read the bills, the way that it is ordered, that it is framed, is very intelligent. And if you read the bill, the reason I'm always talking about Bill C2, C8, C9, C12, C16, and soon to be the new C63, that's going to be called the Online Safety Act. This is what it's rumored to be called. They all intertwine. They all make references to each other. So sorry for my language, but they couldn't go and pass a big fuck you bill, as I like to call it. They couldn't pass all of those laws censoring you with one bill, defining what a hate is defined in Bill C9. Bill C16 is making reference to the hate definition of Bill C9 because it does not exist in the criminal code. You know that Bill C63 is going to pay reference to that as well. If you look at Bill C2, they say that it's a bill about immigration, but they're giving power to bureaucrats to be able to go to your house without a warrant if they identify that you are shipping goods outside of the country. That means they can go after you. And what happens if you're a small business owner like me, for example, that have t-shirts in my garage? That means they have access to my garage. If you look at Bill C8, it defines I'm a sales engineer by trade. I lost my career over this, but I was in the telecom world for over 20 years. I read Bill C8 as the infrastructure needed to install AI everywhere so that Canada can run their own AI software, because they're talking about having access to data centers across Canada. They're trying to put the infrastructure needed behind the implementation of an AI project, like similar to what Palantir is in the US. I don't know if you know what Palantir is, but if you look at all those bills, you take them and you step back from there. As again, for more than a decade, all I did is talk to customers and say, what's your end goal? That's your end goal? No problem. I'll reverse engineer what your end goal is, and I'll show you how our services and the products that we sell can bring you there. And if I look those bills and you try to understand what the actual final result that they want, and you know a bit about a history, you start to piece them together. But it is not incompetence. It is too intelligent when you put them all together, because they connect all one to the other.
So your argument is about the connection. So the fact that all these bills are interconnected and are kind of stressing common kinds of references and so on, that's an indication of a kind of a conspiratorial action. Is that your argument?
What's the most important right that we have? The number one right that we have.
Freedom of speech.
So why are they going after it in 3 different bills
Well, like
that are tabled as we speak right now? Because
I
your
wanna
case,
say,
as I said
though,
before, is about free speech, right?
Yeah.
Free speech
Yeah.
is your case. So
like
go ahead, Rob.
Nico, you're right. Like I understand. Like when you describe your thought process, yes, I can see the dots you're connecting. But I think you've got a bit of blind spot. You think those are the only ways to connect those dots, because there is lots of other ways you can connect those dots. Like yes, you could look at these bills as evidence of malignant, intentionally harmful government, because that is what a malignant, intentionally harmful government could or maybe might do to hurt you if they were trying to. And I understand that. But it's also exactly what an incompetent, ideologically captured government would also do. So like I understand what you're saying. I see the dots you're connecting, but yes, there. Maybe you just don't understand maybe because I'm recently from the left, I understand the liberal mindset. Yeah. But there are definitely people who that their natural ideological thought process takes them there. They genuinely think they're doing the right thing. They're just dumb.
So Rob, what evidence would convince you that it was kind of a conspiratorial attempt by the government and not just incompetence?
I love to be interviewed in our own podcast.
Yeah. I mean,
this is pure epistemology.
I'm a reasonable person, and any type of actual leaked evidence, whistleblower stuff. If there's an email chain that's credible, not just something that says it was on Reddit or something. But if it's credible, and what deems credible, well, that's obviously a debate that society's having. But I do believe reasonable people can come to reasonable conclusions on such things. I don't think that's any insurmountable hurdle to reach. But I don't see it. Like I could see, I guess, so when Nico sees these bills, he sees evidence of malignant government, and I agree with him. That is evidence, but evidence is not proof. And an analogy you could use is if I wake up tomorrow and there's water on my driveway, that's evidence that it rained, but it's not proof. Maybe my neighbor turned a sprinkler on, right? Yeah. So yes, these bills are evidence of that, but it's also evidence of other things as well.
But the thing is, you have to look at behavior. You can't just look at the bills without looking at the behaviors that's happened over the past 5 years. This is the part you missed earlier at the end of our debate is, Rob, you haven't been bitten by the freedom, by free speech. I have. I lost my livelihood over refusing poison because I know that my immune system, I respect my body. I always have and always will. Because I refused poison, I was not able to question it. I was not able to say, you know what? No, I don't know enough about this. I don't want it. And then you start looking at what happened over the past 5 years. Our government, the same people that are still in power today, because don't lie to yourself, Mark Carney was the economic advisor to Trudeau since 2021. This is common sense. You can read, mainstream media talked about it. So you have the same people that are in power that are trying to pass bills that are extremely surveillance and censored. When you saw what they did in 2022, it was ruled to be unconstitutional and illegal, but because they have immunity, they have crown immunity, there will not be any consequences to Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland. There's nothing that you can do to go after them for what they did, although it was proof. It was ruled in the Supreme Court that it was unconstitutional and illegal the way that they used the Emergency Act. So if you look at behavior and then you see documents that are coming from the same government that did those actions, are you going to trust that? You have to be intelligent enough to say, okay, I look at those bills, I looked at what they've done, I look at the way that they speak. You have a government that's telling us to dissociate from our biggest partner, that is the US, to go align more with Europe, which you're looking at Australia that has they're passing all those censorship bills. Now people are getting arrested for hate speech. You look at the UK that's being arrested for hate speech. You look at Macron in France that literally just said that free speech is something that should be that should be controlled by the government, that free speech is what we say you can say. He just said that this week. We have a prime minister that is in bed with Europe, that is a big European fan, that is trying to bring us closer to them. If you cannot underestimate, you cannot be naive and not look at the behavior, look at what they're trying to do, and then not draw conclusions that are extremely bad. Look at what happened to you. Like just your case alone, because you had the audacity to say, show me the graves.
Yeah.
You lose your job.
There's another one. The graves.
Now, but again, like, you know, Nico,
but do you see
like,
that as being kind of a conspiracy? Do you see like the unmarked graves? This is a good question. When you introduced me, you referred to the unmarked graves claims as a hoax.
I called it a hoax.
Yeah.
I called it a hoax.
Yes. So that's kind of a big question now as to whether it was an intentional, deception, or was it a self-deception? And how can we tell the difference between those things?
Yeah, and again, this is just one of those things, like you know, just to prove that I don't just fall on one side of the issue. In that issue, I think that is probably was directed by people who knew better, and maybe they didn't know there was not bodies down there, but they didn't actually believe there was either, and they just didn't care because they were using the story and the narrative for political or social or cultural benefits. The actual existence of the bodies is irrelevant, unless they actually did exist. Then that would be very relevant to those people, of course, because they would use them politically. So in that case, I think that is probably people that are actually behind the scenes intentionally doing this. I just think, like, everything that you're saying, Nico, these are all the things that someone would do who genuinely believes that hate speech is among the most serious problems facing society today. And there are a lot of people on the left who believe that, and those people are idiots, but they genuinely believe that. And you know, you'll see this on the show a lot, Francis, where, you know, we've got some disagreement downstream, but if you go back to the base, you see there's actually agreement that we have is things are bad decisions are being made, government is being run terribly, we need to severely right the ship. And in my opinion, as long as you believe that, then you've got the more common ground than you don't. Whether these are intentionally or not, or just the impact of idiocy, that's an important debate, because whichever one it is going to inform what our response should be. We should respond fundamentally differently to a group of people trying to intentionally harm us than we should someone who is, in their own delusional world believes they're doing the right thing. Just because not even to be nice, but just the effective response will be different to each of those groups.
But the fallacy in what you're saying, Rob, is that you still see a debate happening between the left and the right, and I don't. This is my main prerogative, is even though I call myself a conservative because my value as an individual are more conservative. I believe in small government. I believe in the right of the individual. A society is a bunch of people that decide to live under the same rules, under the same morals. That's all a society is. I want the smallest government possible. That's the difference. If you look at it historically, a conservative, we believe in the individual in a small government. The left, more liberals, believe in government control. The top-down versus bottom-up analogy. I believe in the conservative way of things. I believe in myself being a moral individual. Now, the fallacy that the main difference between you and I is I don't see a left versus right problem. I see a them versus us problem, because if you look at what happened to you, France, if you look at what we're talking about right now, the conservatives, and I can't say conservative party without air quoting because they're liberals, but the Conservative Party is not going after those bills the way that they should if they understood the actual implication, which makes me believe that they agree with those bills and we have the illusion of choice. Just like George Carlin used to like to say in the 90s, if voting actually mattered, they wouldn't let you do it. And this is where I see things. I don't see a left versus right problem. I see a big group that I'm not part of.
Just to clarify, I actually don't. I also don't think that the main battle of today is the left versus the right. I think it's woke versus everyone else, or the sane and reasonable people. And woke, I perceive as this giant, cancerous, pus-filled tumor that is metastasized all throughout society. And it has. It was born on the left. It grew on the left. And now it's metastasized almost everywhere. Even in some right-leaning institutions, right? You'll see the Wall Street Journal talk about her penis in their news articles, and you're like, what the fuck is going on here? But, you know, I think that woke is, and I know people on the right think that woke cannot be separated from the left or classical liberalism. I still believe it can. I know that the woke tumor has taken up what feels like the large chunk of the current left, but I think it can be excised and relegated to the dust, the trash bin of history, and the dysfunctional and dysgenic and anti-human nihilists who have pushed woke. They can go back to the outer fringes of society where they have been for the last, up until probably starting in the 60s, which is when everything about what you're saying of no moral truth, every spring that, right? Now you've got these now you've got making allowances for what is generally actually behavior that was shamed through much of history, and for a good reason, right? Not some behavior has been incorrectly shamed, but something like pedophilia, there's a very reasonable taboo against pedophilia, right? We don't need to start rebranding pedophiles as MAPs, minor attracted persons. There's a reason why society found that very shameful, and those sorts of taboos should continue to have to stand in society, right? And no moral, all morality is relative. That very cancerous idea that you discussed there, that sort of set the seeds for everything. That leads directly to those sorts of things, the lessening of taboos. Because if morality is relative, who's to say? And you'll hear them talk about that. Oh, he's one of the good pedophiles. He doesn't offend, or he can't help who he's attracted to. And you actually hear this kind of discourse on the left. And that's why I don't, I'm not by any stretch a member of the current left in good standing, but I do fundamentally consider myself a classical liberal. That is still my worldview. And naive though it may be, I still think that the left can be saved from itself. But this will be a very long project to do. You basically have to rip out root and branch a lot of institutional woke.
The left used to be about class politics.
Exactly right, and even like we talk about freedom of speech a lot here,
and that is gone.
In my mind, that was
the
core liberal view.
Has no interest in class politics. It's all these subjective identities, and the LGBTQ, 2S elemental P stuff is like one of the most prominent kinds of crazy ideas that is now being imposed on everyone. So, and that really has nothing to do with ordinary working people and trying to improve their living conditions and trying to make it so that people have enough to survive. These kinds of basic questions, which the left was its main focus, and now is really kind of been pushed to the sidelines. So, yeah.
The right's not defending it either, and that's the point I'm trying to make through this whole thing is whatever issue you're really seeing in Canada right now, neither side are addressing it. One could be the one responsible for proposing it, but then the other side that's supposed to be in opposition is not doing anything about it. Like, did the Conservative come to your help when you got censored all over the place? Did Poliev call you and say, you know what, France, we need to fix this because this is unacceptable that this is our education system in Canada?
Yeah, and right now with what happened at the University of Lethbridge and the Alberta government, even though they have a free speech directive, and the University of Lethbridge canceled me in 2023, which is going to court in April. And then they just did it again in 2026. They're second-time violators. Why is Daniel Smith and Miles McDougall, the advanced education minister, why are they not, sanctioning the University of Lethbridge? And on the unmarked graves file, we're going to be expecting about 576 pages of documents on the excavations, the question of what has been happening with respect to the $12.1 million that were supposedly spent on excavations by the Kamloops Indian Band. Why is Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party of Canada not asking questions in the House of Commons about the misallocation of funds that happened with respect to that case? They're completely silent on that.
And this goes back to your question earlier. How do I prove, or at least where do my ideas come from? It cannot just be from paperwork, from bills, but you have to look at the behavior of people that are pushing the bills and the people that are voting in favor of those bills, or the people that are not talking against those bills. And that's where you start to see that there is a massive problem in Canada, because there's no, the show's called The Political Orphans because we're not represented. Rob doesn't feel represented by the Liberals, yet all our parties are Liberals in Canada. I don't feel represented by any of them because I'm way more conservative than all of them combined. Yet, I'm the problem, right? People like me are the problem because we have the audacity to actually look, connect the dots, and I'm a big fan of psychology. I understand human behavior, and if you look at the behavior that we're seeing here, it's something that has happened throughout history, and it never plays out well for the citizens like Canada that are, I don't want to say lazy. I don't want to say that we are, I think we just don't care. I think that we have all, we can see clearly where we're going. You look at, like I said earlier, you look at Australia, you look at the UK, you can see where we're going. You see, we're trying to pass the exact same bills that Australia passed, that the UK passed, and we're too idiotic to look at, maybe if they do pass, we're going to end up like the UK, where 13,000+ people every year are arrested for social media posts that hurt people's feelings. This is a reality, and it's already started. There were at least 3 guys last year in 2025 that were arrested. One of them is in prison. One is waiting for his actual time in court. But this is already happening in Canada, where words are hurting people's feelings, and you're starting to see jail sentences for that. And we have bills that are being passed, like Bill C9 and Bill C16, that are talking about hate speech with consequences to up to 10 years in prison. 10 years, that's more time than a rapist, than somebody that raped a woman with a gun for words. And you're going to tell me that I can't connect the dots about the behavior that I've seen over the past 5 years? This is the thing, right? It's at one point we need to wake up and smell the coffee and see that if we're not diligent, if we don't do anything about this, the UK is what we will become. This is a fact to me. This is just a matter of time. George Orwell talked about it in 1984. That was written in 1940. It was published in 1948. That dude was a Nostradamus visionary. I don't understand how he saw this coming, but he did. Almost about 80 years ago. Literally, almost 80 years ago.
Exactly. Yep.
And I mean, yeah, and I think I think the thing with Orwell there, why it's because it's like, how the hell did this guy get this so right? But I think he got it so right is because it's not that he's obviously a brilliant man, but he's a crystal ball. This is authoritarian, totalitarian things. They're based on common archetypes, personality types that exist and show up and live among us right now. These people live among us, right? There's always that person. And we have built, to a certain extent, a type of society that keeps that kind of personality in check. But as soon as the conditions become right, all of a sudden, it's just, a lot of people after World War II were like, what the hell happened? Germany was like a civilized modern country, and then they all literally fucking turned into mass murderers. Like, they all turned a blind eye when they're Jews were being marched down to it was an entire country knew about this. And if they
freedom of
didn't know,
speech, just to bring up the freedom of speech point, that was the first thing to go in the turn that happened, and also the universities.
And so history repeats itself, because we're not dealing with, none of these totalitarian authoritarian types are unique in history. They exist probably enough higher than we think, and when the conditions become right, they sort of pop out of the woodwork. And I think clearly Orwell's unique strength is he's probably got quite high emotional intelligence, and he can probably read people, actually see people, who they actually are, actual motivations. And I think once you understand that personality type, if you're good at reading people, I think both of them probably come up with a list of 4 or 5 at least actual real human beings that are just normal people in their lives, who probably do display some version of these archetypes. So, I think when we marvel how correct Orwell got it, but it's not because he had a crystal ball. It's because these personality types are not really that uncommon. And that's why you really don't want to create a society where the conditions are right for this kind of a thing. And I think, Nico, to your point there, I think that, with the, with the free speech, I think that I agree, we're heading down towards the UK, because that was the point I was going to address, because you're talking about we're heading down the UK. We are heading down that road for sure. I just think it's there's still time to turn the car around. But we have to start talking about it. That's what I do on this show. This is me doing this, right? Eventually, if enough people, people hear certain messages, that's how memes spread, right? And you can have counter ideologies that spread. You're seeing gender critical ideology now is spreading, and it's being quite an effective counter to transgender ideology. That's one of the issues that's turning. So that 100%. Is going to be the first one to go. The trans stuff, and there are signs. It's so obviously bad. It's just completely subjective. There's no. You can't even argue that these men who claim they're women are oppressed. With the Aboriginal file, Aboriginal people are suffering. Many Aboriginal people are suffering terribly. So people understandably want to do something to rectify the situation. But in the case of these, these autogynephiles who, get aroused by thinking of themselves as women or whatever is going on there, want to go into women's, changing rooms and all this. These are not oppressed people. They're celebrated. These are predators that are doing this. They're privileged people. Yeah.
Yeah, Mia Hughes just posted something about this today, that it's coming. Yeah. I'm trying to pull up her.
He's fined $750,000. This guy.
That's wild, eh? That case. That's so aggressive. That's gonna have blowback. So but people are not acting with the level of outrage that you would expect to be acting. But there's a slow burn vibe to it. I see it as slowly building up.
But it's changing. There is definitely, it's different this year than it was last year.
Definitely.
Anyway. One thing I always say, and unfortunately people that are a lot more intelligent than I am seem to agree with me, it's going to have to get worse before it gets better. Because the average individual is not aware of what's going on. In your case, being the perfect example, is people are not realizing what's happening. People are hearing that this school board trustee said certain things about the trans and got fined by the what's the commission? It's the
Rights Commission.
The Rights Commission of BC, $750,000, and then a week before that, you have a guy in Montreal, a bald-headed, non-binary dude that sued an actual haircut parlor, because they do both men and women, for $12,000 because he had to choose if he was a man or a woman on his
for the haircut.
Yeah, for booking his appointment off their website. So this is the world that we live in, and this is not going to stop anytime soon, unfortunately. But hey, it's look at Orwell predicted what happened. He also showed that it gets a lot worse. Unfortunately, in his book, like 1984, and by the way, you showed yours right there. I don't know if you saw it. There's an all-seeing eye here. My wife, almost 5 years ago, bought me the full collection, all the books and the essay. You put them together, it's just Big Brother eye that just looks. But all to say that, France, I did not expect the conversation to go here, but I like.
No, that was a lot of fun.
You can tell that you're a professor, and political science, I believe, is some of your background, and you like to ask questions. I've never been questioned on my own podcast like this. Well, interviewed, sorry, not questioned, but interviewed. So unfortunately, we didn't get to talk about you as much, but hopefully you enjoyed the conversation. I know I did.
Yep.
Yeah. I had a lot of fun as well. That was great. That was probably one of my favorite interviews we've done in a while, and we do a lot.
Well, thank you, friends. Hopefully we can do this again where I'll put Rob in a corner so you can actually talk. And I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But I appreciate your time, friends. Thanks for responding to me. Thanks for coming on the show. Hopefully we can do this again. As I said earlier, I meant it. If you are indeed in Montreal and you feel unsecure, just you have my email address. Let me know if you want to have somebody to watch your back. We can make that happen.
Okay. Thank you so much. It was great being on.
Absolutely. Have a good day.
Yes. Have a great day, Francis.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well,
there you have it.
There you have it. I thought that was a lot of fun. Way over. It was a lot of fun, though. It was a really good conversation. I like that. And I think this is a good comment to take from Kevin Inc. 3979. We'll end on that. It says Rob is correct. Woke is not left. Woke are fucking idiots. Nico is right. Conservative Party is uniparty liberals. Nice bit of common ground. And the
I would say common sense.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Common sense, common ground, not so common these days.
Nope.
Prairie says that was a great show. We appreciate that. It was a lot of fun, and usually if it's fun for us, it's usually fun for you guys too. Usually the conversations flow in, and I mean, I gotta say, I hate to give you any sort of compliment or anything, but you do good with the guests. You do a good job.
Fuck you.
It's just
I don't want to give you
kills me inside to give you any sort of compliment whatsoever.
I spent a lot of time researching and looking for people. This one was
Prairie. It's their personality on the air too, right? Because that matters.
I look for both. Oh yeah, because I've interviewed some really intelligent, bright people, but they just suck on camera. And there's nothing you can do to make it better. No, it just sucks.
Like a black hole suck. It just sucked the energy right out of you.
But this one was Prairie. It was because I've been trying to get her on the show, and Prairie is like, "Oh, you should try to reach her," and she gave me her email address. So I reached out and she responded right away. So that was all on Prairie. Thank you on that one. But I'm working on some. I have a professor out of Toronto that has agreed to come on the show to speak about MAiD. Because that's one of the things I wanted to cover today, but we went into a massive banter on free speech, and we went 30 minutes, but it's just been announced that the government is looking. We've heard about the mature minors in the past, but now there's legislation. There's conversations that were tabled on. Oh no, but on February 15th, just a couple of weeks ago, or actually last week, there was conversations in Parliament where some members of Parliament were asking for mature minors to have the right to use MAiD without parental consent. Without parental consent. So there's a line that's being drawn right now. So I found someone to, you know what? I know Kelsey. I've been in conversations with her. She is so busy. It is almost impossible for her to get her on the show. I know her. We follow it. Oh, bro, she's ex-military. So not only is she a vet, but she runs now. She's on what's the Alex Jones platform? What's the name of his podcast again? I'm drawing a blank right now.
Infowars.
So she was the host of Infowars a few times over the past few weeks. So no, she's Kelsey is in high demand, as Trevor saying. I've been trying to get her on the show for a year. She wants to come. It's just a matter of having it done. So I'm looking. She is not a she's very good in front of a camera. She knows what she's talking about, but she doesn't come from an academic background. I like to have academics. I like to have people that are just extremely knowledgeable in what they talk about. You know what I'm saying? Like somebody like her. I would love to have her on the show. It's just a matter of making it happen. It's not happening right now, and I want to talk about it. But all to say, I found someone that agreed to come on the show. He's out of the University of Toronto. We just need to talk about the format to see how he wants to do it, because he wants to put kind of a history lesson behind it too, like as to what was intent. That's what I proposed to him, is to have what was supposed to happen with MAiD, what is happening right now, and what are we seeing in the future, to kind of have like a history, not just on the conspiracy of what we think is happening, but he wants to lay it down, what was supposed to happen, what's happening, and where we're going. So it will make for a very, very interesting
I'd love to have that
podcast. We're gonna have it. We're gonna have it. I approached 4 different people, so I'm just waiting for them. I approached the biggest name, and he's an academics too, so I'm waiting for him to get back to me. So we'll see. I should have, hopefully, either this week or next week. I doubt this week. It probably won't happen this week, but I'm hoping that at least next week we'll be able to have someone. Next on Wednesday, just so you guys know, we have Mia Hughes coming back to speak about Bill C4, because we've been hearing a lot about Bill C4 that the Conservative voted for. That's the one that opened the can of worm to Soji 1, 2, 3, what we're seeing right now. So we're gonna do a deep dive. She's gonna be there for an hour on Wednesday to do a deep dive on Bill C4, and we're gonna do a deep dive on Bill C16, which is to protect, like, it's part of the bill is to protect the trans, and they're using the hate speech definition from Bill C8 in order to make it happen. So that's that. And then on Thursday, hold on, I got something else on Thursday. I don't remember if this was Prairie that recommended it, but we got a guy by the name of Lee Dobson. He has a YouTube channel, and yeah, his name sounded familiar to me too. And he's a bald-headed guy too, so he's gonna fit right in. And he's been in court. I have to reread his full story, and I don't want to misquote him here, but he's been in court, and he's trying to expose what's happening to him. And something like 34 of his videos have been taken down by YouTube because the government has asked YouTube to take them down. So it's going to make for a very, very interesting conversation on Thursday. So Wednesday we got Mia Hughes, and then Thursday we got Lee Dobson. I'm going to try to book other people maybe on Monday, Tuesday. We'll see. But yeah, that's what we got. We're like 37 minutes over time.
Yeah. All right, we'll close it out here. Just,
let's close it out, but let's take another comment.
I'm just gonna take this as we close. Rob's camera finally made it to the end of the show. Cowboy the camera says, "I'm proud of Rob's internet." So yeah, so it actually wasn't my internet. I thought it was. It was some issues with my computer. I've got that sorted out. So going forward, it'll be no lag. All those issues, because I know it's been really kind of a bit giant pain in the ass for the last 2 weeks. It was almost impossible for us to have any banter because there was like 4 or 5 second lag on everything, and by the time you say something, you're getting my words and then you stomp, and it just is a nightmare. But going forward, should be back to normal. Tonight was actually good. That's what we see. Without the lag, we can all engage in a conversation. So I think it's really what I think the fans want to see. All right, folks, excellent start to the week. Wait, it is Sunday, right? Yeah, it's Sunday night. Start to the week. Jesus.
And by the way, Sunday, we also got, I don't know if you know this guy, I've recorded with him. That dude is a fucking hero of mine. A guy by the name of Craig Sawyer. I don't know if you know who that guy is, but he's ex Navy SEALs, and today he catches pedophiles. He organizes stings. Yeah, I'm gonna have. Oh, I've recorded with him before. He's not a friend or anything, but I reached out to him over the weekend, and he's like, "Oh yeah, absolutely." But Craig Sawyer on Sunday, so Sunday the 31st, I believe, the 1st, we're gonna have Craig Sawyer to come on the show to speak about what he does, and because he has arrested with police sting operations pedophiles. He catches them. He has a documentary on YouTube. The dude's a beast, man. He's ex-military, like he's ex-Navy SEALs, so he's a good monster. He's a massive Christian too. That's why he does what he does. But yeah, that guy is love what that guy does. Just a really cool dude.
Nice. Yes, be good.
Yeah,
all right, guys, you heard it here first. You definitely want to come back and check that out. If you want to support the show, you can do so by becoming a member through YouTube for the low price of $2.99 per month. You can also buy us a coffee in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. You can also just keep coming back. That's another way to support the show. Throw those comments in there, get us in the algorithm. But again, if you are new to the show, we are heavily based on audience participation. We had a guest tonight, so we weren't able to take quite as many comments as normal. But normally, we're going to take as many as we can. So make sure you get those in. Other than that, folks, have a great night. We will see you tomorrow night.
Peace.